And the past week, you could say, was quite a week. Actually, since Trump took office, our lives have become so full of events that it feels like more happens in a year than could happen in someone's entire lifetime. But what especially interesting and particularly important things have happened? Of course, the war in Ukraine continues, and now there is also a fairly positional war with Iran going on. The Democrats are standing their ground to prevent honest voting in America. But in fact, no one expects anything different from them. In 2026, it is planned to deport about 2.5 million illegal immigrants from the country. We will talk about the rift in relations between old Europe and America. We will talk about who benefits from what is happening in the Middle East, both in the short term and in the long term. The long term. These are completely different players. But two topics stand apart, because how things unfold in these situations will determine the future of the entire world, both tomorrow and the day after. The first is the issue that has the greatest impact on America, to be honest, and on the world. This is the question of who will ultimately gain power in the United States of America. I'm talking about the year 1926 and the elections, and also about 1928, the presidential elections, and everything else. And here I discovered some absolutely astonishing things that I couldn't have even imagined just yesterday. But first, a bit about the events taking place, and then we'll dive into this, as you'll see, absolutely incredible whirlwind of events. Once again, I want to say our president is a genius. The second issue is Trump's ultimatum to Iran, and Iran's response to that ultimatum. The American-Israeli-Iranian war, which began on February 28th of this year, has entered a new phase. As of March 22nd, the fighting has taken on the character of a prolonged strike or exchange of strikes on strategic infrastructure. On March 18th to 19th, the IDF carried out strikes on the South Pars gas field in Iran. Fires broke out and production was halted. On March 18th, Iranian missiles struck the world's largest LNG complex in Ras Laffan, which is in Qatar. There were fires and serious damage. Up to 20% of the world's LNG supplies pass through this facility. According to the Iranian Red Crescent, the number of civilian deaths in Iran has exceeded 1,200 people, including children. But I want to tell you right away, they always do. They lie. I mean, sometimes they always lie. President Trump demanded that Iran open the Hormuz Strait within 48 hours, just like in the USSR, knowing that most likely they would answer no, to which Iran responded with a threat to strike energy and infrastructure targets in the U.S. and their allies in the region. No one knows exactly what will happen in 48 hours. The ultimatum was given on Saturday evening, so after Trump's ultimatum, there is no clearly outlined plan of action, as always, at least not in the open. So by the time the 48 hours are up, that's, well, Monday evening or maybe Tuesday morning. Let's say, yes, most likely. So the U.S. will intensify its air campaign, trying to actually push Iranian forces out of the Strait area and start escorting tankers with military protection. Iran responds with a massive attack on U.S. and allied military and energy facilities. Well, that's Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Israel. Threats of a complete closure of Hormuz, strikes on tankers and port infrastructure in the Persian Gulf are a tougher scenario. This would be a multi-week attack, more of a U.S. Navy and Air Force operation to actually sweep out the Iranian presence from the Strait area, possibly with a landing of Marines on key sections of the coast and on an island like Kark. Donald Trump's ultimatum has a simple logic. By the deadline, he must either blow something up or show a convincing surrogate of action, otherwise his words will lose value. A. Donald Trump, so isn't it in his style for something to happen there at the critical moment? Limited but striking attacks, a few high-precision strikes on pre-selected Iranian targets. There is military infrastructure near Hormuz, air defense facilities, specific energy nodes, just to say, I promised, I delivered. but not to destroy Iran's entire energy system at once. A public declaration of victory, even with minimal military action, to come out and announce that Iran has opened the Strait, meaning they surrendered, got what they deserved, or something along those lines. And why present this outcome as a fulfilled ultimatum? Well, obviously it's for the domestic audience and for the market. But what can the U.S. Marines actually occupy with 2,500 of them there and 4,500 more on the way, so to speak, as reinforcements? That's quite a significant force. Option number 1. There are 4 islands there that might interest us. Now, let me tell you, in the Strait of Hormuz, these are Larak, Hormuz, Keshem, and Hengam. I think that's what the last one is called. These are exactly the kinds of targets that have been studied for decades in American war games as objectives for Marine Corps landings. To physically control the passage of tankers. Naturally, all of this has been played out for years, for decades, developed, and so on. Option 2. A limited foothold on the coast with Bandar Abbas or key bases. But this is already a much more risky and bloody operation. And in Washington, they treat it with extreme caution because of the threat of a prolonged ground war, which is something we absolutely do not want. And why capture anything at all? The main military logic is not the occupation of Iran, but physical control over the narrow bottleneck of Hormuz and the key infrastructure for oil export, to guarantee the passage of tankers without depending on Tehran's will. The second goal is to pressure Tehran's regime. It shows that the U.S. can cut Iran off from the sea, from oil, and if necessary, by expanding the operation, Washington raises the cost for the Iranian leadership to continue the conflict. But let's go back to Eastern Europe for a moment. The fighting doesn't stop for a single day. On March 21st, Ukrainian forces repelled a Russian breakthrough and did so in 7 directions at once. On March 22nd, Russia lost 940 servicemen and 30 artillery systems. However, these are figures from the General Staff, Ukraine, and they too, as they say, won't hesitate. Under control, which is physically true and confirmed, almost 400 square kilometers after Russia's loss and access to Starlink, where, by the way, thanks to Moscow, Russia is preparing for mobilization, and the number mentioned is 409,000 people in 2026. An April offensive is being prepared with the involvement of Crimean reservists. According to media reports, Putin has limited his public movements after the killing of Khamenei, fearing he might become the next victim. The war in the Middle East is still changing the Kremlin's calculations. According to experts, Turkey and Saudi Arabia will become the main beneficiaries of the new regional order. War, actually, ladies and gentlemen, is the main enemy of freedom. When states are at war, the cannons, so to speak, sound vaguely. The music becomes more complicated. The state inevitably expands its power and restricts the rights of citizens. In 1944, Hayek wrote about this very well. Trump urged the Iranian people to stay in shelter for now and then to take power into their own hands. I don't know how he suggests they take power into their own hands without weapons, but it's quite possible that some work is being done in this regard. Let's put it that way, okay? Vice President Vance publicly supported the war with Iran, but remained silent for several days. And according to the Wall Street Journal, he is concerned about the prospect of a prolonged conflict. He kind of talked about this not publicly, but in private conversations. And here we move on to the main topic of the day, namely what will happen if the war in Iran drags on, coffins start coming into the country, and instead of improving, the economy goes down. Not temporarily, like now, not just stalling, but actually going down. Many people, myself included, said back in 2025 that this could mean the halt of many of Trump's projects because the lower house of Congress shifted into the hands of the Democrats. And besides, it could also mean that the Oval Office will go to the Democratic Party in 2028. In this regard, I said that I'm sure Trump has some ideas about how to stop this war, how to lower the price of oil, and how to improve the economic situation in America. Of course, he has such ideas, I'm sure, but I found another action, or rather a counteraction by Trump, which generally shows what Trump is planning to do. By the way, it's almost impossible to predict Trump. Who can anticipate him? To predict him, I don't know, you have to be on the same level of genius as he is. Even before the war began in the second half of 25, we discussed the conditions under which the Republicans, the Republican Party, would significantly expand their influence, and after Trump, a person would enter the White House who could be called his successor. His successor. I'm sorry. His follower. And of course, because of the personality, some things will change, but the direction. The course set by Trump will continue. The first condition, naturally, is for people to have a better life, and not just statistically, but in things they can actually feel. To see every day, every hour that something has improved. More jobs are opening up, salaries at work are increasing, and inflation is low enough, and the salary increases outpace it. Children are no longer forced to meet with men dressed as women with painted lips and fake eyelashes, who read stories to children, syllable by syllable, about how it's good to have sexual intercourse in a place not meant for it. Men are not allowed to enter women's showers. Children there are not persuaded to change their gender and not to tell their parents about it. People can express themselves to teachers, and during school or city council meetings, they can say what they want without the FBI being involved. Then they started being investigated by them, and that's incredibly important. And it's incredibly important for trials to begin. Did you rob our country? Did you lie to us during the elections? Did you use your official position to personally enrich yourself at the expense of all those people who pay your salary? Or let's say, did you use it to promote your party while disregarding the country? Let the country suffer as long as my party benefits. Now we want the time of reckoning to come. So it's incredibly important for the people of the country to see, first of all, what kind of harm the Democratic Party has brought to the country. And secondly, that this harm is being eradicated by the new government. By the way, before I forget, make sure to subscribe and, even more importantly, hit the bell. For you, it takes a second, but for YouTube, it's a sign of your interest. And not just interested like giving a like, but interested enough that it's worth showing it to other people as well. That's why the higher the percentage of subscribers who hit the bell, the better these videos spread across the Russian-speaking internet. I hope that while I was saying all this, those who weren't subscribed have already managed to subscribe. And if you've never clicked the bell before, well, go find it. And make sure, as they say, to smash it. Hit it with all your might. To what I said earlier, namely the conditions under which the country goes and gives its votes to Trump and MAGA, one more condition has been added. So, it is necessary to achieve positive results in military actions in the Middle East. And here Trump started a completely perfect game. Let's think about it together. All the time that there is talk about foreign policy, about the country's security, about operations, both our diplomats and our military are involved. Next to Trump all the time is Rubio, who holds at least, as far as I know, 3 positions in the president's administration. I really hope he gets paid 3 salaries. He is closely involved with events in the Middle East. He is closely involved with events in Europe, with NATO relations, relations with Ukraine and Russia, and oil supplies to global markets. Rubio is involved in everything that has anything to do with our country's security, diplomatically, militarily, and yes, even financially. You could say that this is handled by Lutnick plus the Secretary of the Treasury. Nevertheless, Rubio is constantly present and visible on screen. His image, his personality are inextricably linked to everything that happens in our country's foreign policy. You could say he's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but actually the Secretary of State, right? But it's absolutely not necessary to keep him around all the time and show him on TV constantly. Give him the opportunity to speak, to sit on the couch at meetings that are directly related to him and those that aren't. At the same time, Vice President J.D. Vance is not seen on camera next to Trump when it comes to something related to international politics or war. There are rumors circulating that he is somewhat concerned and does not fully support the policy in the Middle East. It's not exactly clear about what, but not about everything. At the same time, the press reports that he made such remarks in a private capacity. I want to tell you right away, ladies and gentlemen, that first of all, if Vice President Vance had expressed such thoughts privately, we wouldn't have known about it. The fact that we find out about this indicates that it's a planned project, a leak. Why is this necessary? Okay. Now we've come to the heart of the matter, which is exactly what I wanted to share with you. Let's imagine that everything with the war is going great, that we've achieved our goals, that we've done it with little bloodshed, that it didn't last very long, and oil dropped, went down, and we brought it to $60 per barrel, that we control the oil of Venezuela and Iran, and our own oil production has already reached 15 million barrels per day, and domestic affairs in the United States of America, especially the economic situation of the middle class, are starting to noticeably improve. Who is next to Trump? Who is that hero who helped and in many cases personally did things that had such a positive impact on our American life? It's him, the remarkable, smiling, intelligent, and thoughtful Michael. Naturally, the smiling patriarch passes the scepter and orb to him, and then Cuba became free as well. We learned about what heroes Marco's parents and grandparents were, how they fled, how they suffered for freedom, and how wonderful Marco is. Rubio made it to the very top on his own, and now he will be the first Latino and also a Cuban to take the reins of power in America. And now, let's imagine that things aren't all that good and bright with Iran. Blue. Industrial stagnation, discord with Europeans, expensive gasoline, high inflation. Do you think people will rush to vote for someone who, to them, will be a symbol of all of the above? Even though most MAGA supporters will understand the necessity of what was done, nevertheless, there won't be much enthusiasm to go to the polling station with the name Marco on the ballot. Now let's look at the other candidate. 2 days ago, Trump announced the creation of a special office for government corruption affairs. We already know about the nightmare that has befallen Minnesota. We know that similar things have happened in California, and without a doubt, the FBI is already aware of where else the same scheme is being used. In California, for example, there was an address where 100 doctors were registered, who constantly sent bills for payment to the state program for helping the sick, the elderly, and the needy. They were constantly paid without ever checking that address. Or there was a doctor found who is now 84 years old and was incredibly surprised to find out that apparently he had been submitting 1,000 bills a year to the state of California. In total, he received $600 million from the state of California for bills he supposedly submitted. Every single bill was paid. No one had any doubts about it. The doctor was so shocked that he didn't even know how to respond. That is, there is already a wide range of discovered cases that have been put away in what you might call a "we'll pull it out when we need it" drawer. And as we discussed, starting in May, then June, then all of July, and then all of August, so that by September the country would hate and despise anyone who is a member of the Democratic Party. So who is the hero here? The knight in shining armor who brought this to light and cleaned the stables of this evil and filth? So the one who will lead this process and this administration will be none other than the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. Smart, thoughtful, someone who was not involved at all in the war in Iran, and who privately expressed concern about it. No one will remember exactly what concerned him, but everyone will remember that he was worried about something. And as it turned out, he was right. But who is he going to investigate and expose? Well, the right-wing press has been writing for 2 weeks now that the theft, robbery, looting, and corruption that happened in Minnesota are nothing compared to what's going on in California. And why is California so important to us? Because the most likely presidential candidate from the Democratic Party, of course, in 2028, it's the current governor of California who is stepping down from this position in November in order to run for the presidency. His name, as you know, is Gavin Newsom. So, gentlemen, it seems that we are ready for a fight when the consequences of Iran are positive and when the consequences of Iran have made the situation in the U.S. worse. Write what you think about this. Am I right about Rubio and Vance? Or do you have any other ideas? That's all for today. We're saying goodbye until next time.